Jenny, moving over to you. I mean, what do you think are the particular challenges that the CAR context presents to peacekeepers and humanitarians in terms of protection of civilians? I mean, Alison's mentioned some of them, but could you elaborate?
Sure. Thanks, Wendy, and thanks also for convening this panel and for this issue of HPN, which is excellent. I want to flag three issues, I think. I think in the first instance, for humanitarians in particular, is the challenge of what kind of relationship do the humanitarians need with MINUSCA? What will that relationship look like, and how will humanitarians actively shape that relationship? And I think in the first instance, Emma Fanning's piece in HPN very articulately sets out the importance of a distinct humanitarian character to the humanitarian operations, and avoiding a situation whereby humanitarian action is subsumed or conflated with the political and peacekeeping mandate of MINUSCA. At the same time, it's absolutely essential that the relationship with the mission allow humanitarians to inform and strategically guide the prioritization of protection of civilian tasks of the mission, encompassing the components that Alison described, certainly with an emphasis on the civilian components. So this is a double-edged sword. On one hand, we want very constructive, proactive shaping of relationships with the mission, but at the same time retaining the distinct character of humanitarian operations. I can't think of a particular context in which that has been overall successful. There have been moments when cooperation has been good. And I think what we've seen across contexts is once humanitarian actors are satisfied that humanitarian operations have a distinct humanitarian, impartial, and neutral character, that humanitarians are generally more happy to come to the table to undertake joint analysis, collaboratively plan, etc. If that distinction is not established and firmly reinforced on a consistent basis, then humanitarians move into damage control, and they will insist repeatedly on that distinction and find it difficult to come together around more strategic objectives and making full use of the capacities and the mandates of the mission. So I would really emphasize that, and the role of the Senior Humanitarian Coordinator and the HCT really cannot be underestimated in that sense. The second issue that I wanted to flag relates to, the level of violence, the type of violence, the spread of violence in CAR is so extreme that I think we're in a bit of a danger as humanitarians of falling into a routine service delivery rut. We've seen this happen over and over again, and I would point to South Sudan as an example of that. But our challenge, therefore, is to avoid falling into that rut and indeed challenge ourselves to look at who are the populations at highest risk and what will it take to enhance their protection, to increase their safety, to reduce the risk that they're exposed to. And I think Joseph Zapater's piece in HPN is really excellent on that front, whereby the protection cluster conceived of a strategy to deal with pockets of populations trapped in extremely high-risk situations, and very thoughtful reflection on the dilemmas and the trade-offs between relocation versus reconciliation or what have you. A couple of things I want to stress on that, and first is the voluntary character of population movements. To a great extent, it is not our choice. It's not up to us whether people stay or whether they leave. I think we need to face the reality that people are faced with untenable choices They need to make hard decisions about what they will do in the interests of their own safety, their families, their communities. So we need to be prepared for multiple scenarios. We should not be preparing for just relocation or evacuation or just a reconciliation scenario. So we need to think about whether we're equipped for the voluntary character of movements, obtaining informed consent before we put plans in motion. And a couple of things to really look at in terms of our ability to facilitate such processes. One is what measures need to be undertaken to preserve the civilian character of evacuations. So, for example, are we putting in place mechanisms for fighters to surrender weapons, for example? And then that relates to the role of the peacekeeping mission. Is that treated as a priority? Will the mission have the ability to secure weapons or destroy weapons, and so on? The other is the clarity of the roles of different actors in facilitating evacuation. And I have to say, if you look at Joseph's article, it really spells out in quite clear terms that protection in this instance cannot appropriately be viewed as a single sector. It requires the collaboration and cooperation of logistics, of people dealing with civ-mil coordination and security arrangements, negotiations with the various parties. Food, water, shelter, you name it, it's all required in facilitating an evacuation. So such strategy most appropriately lives under the leadership of the Senior Humanitarian Coordinator and the HCT, or indeed the Intercluster Coordination Body, in order to ensure that all sectors, all capacities, all disciplines are brought to bear on facilitating these processes. Many recent OPRs, operational peer reviews in L3 emergencies, have flagged, HCTs don't have an overarching protection strategy, or the HCT must consider how to operationalize the centrality of protection in this humanitarian response. And I would say this whole question of evacuation, in fact, epitomizes exactly that. The last thing that I just want to emphasize in terms of the relationship with the peacekeeping mission, developing strategies that inform the entirety of the humanitarian response, we need to avoid the temptation to overgeneralize the patterns of conflict in CAR. It's easy to paint the situation with a very broad brush of rampant communal violence, this group targeting that group, which sort of we run the risk of falling into the situation of ignoring the very distinct and specific risk patterns for individuals and for subgroups within a population. So if we are to inform a comprehensive protection strategy at an HCT level and through engagement with the mission, it's really essential that we disaggregate the risk and understand the individual risk patterns.
Jenny, thank you very much. There's a lot for us to mull over there.